"You're standing in his spot," she said. That's how she greeted me. No kiss. No smile. Just that. Like I'd accidentally parked in the CEO's space and not next to the woman I'd promised forever. I looked down at the floor, then up at her face, trying to decode if it was a joke. It wasn't. "I'm sorry," I replied, blinking too many times. That's what I do when I'm nervous. I blink like a broken turn signal. She used to find it cute. Now she just sipped her drink. She was in full hostess mode. Hair perfectly twisted up. Eyes sharp. Lipstick like armor. She was always beautiful, but tonight it felt weaponized. People passed behind me, laughing. Glasses clinked. Someone tripped over a speaker cord and got a sarcastic round of applause. But I heard none of it. All I heard was the hollow echo of my heartbeat in the silence between us. She didn't even introduce me to him. He was already there, standing too close. Wearing that smugness men like me could never grow into. I didn't need to ask his name. I'd seen his LinkedIn profile 2 months ago when I got suspicious and searched her work contacts. He offered me a handshake. I ignored it. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I just couldn't. If I touched him, I might shatter something in myself. Something fragile I was pretending still held. They kept talking like I wasn't there. And I just stood, like a misplaced coat rack with nothing to hang. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her what happened to us. When did I stop being her person? When did I become background noise? A +1 for the sake of appearances? But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I reached into my pocket, pulled out the ring. No box, just cold metal against shaking fingers. And without looking at her, not directly, I placed it down, right there, between a half-eaten canopy and her untouched phone. Quietly, deliberately. She stopped laughing. The guy stopped smiling. And for the first time that night, I think she actually saw me. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Because what happened after I walked away from that table wasn't just about betrayal. It was about revelation. And someone else at that party, someone I never expected, made sure the truth didn't stay buried. I didn't take the elevator. I took the stairs, all 7 flights of them. Not out of drama or pride. Just because I needed to feel something. The burn in my legs, the echo of my footsteps, the smell of concrete and rust. It grounded me more than that glass room ever could. I didn't even grab my coat. I left it hanging on the back of her chair, like some symbolic shedding of whatever dignity I still had. The thing is, I hadn't planned to do it. I didn't walk into that party thinking tonight's the night I walk away. I wasn't brave like that. If you knew me, you'd know I hold on way too long. To people. To promises. To hope that should have died months ago. But there was something in her laugh. Not just the pitch or the way her shoulders moved. It was the way it didn't include me. Like I was never a chapter in her book, just a footnote. That laugh cut deeper than any argument or silence ever could. That laugh told me everything. I stepped out into the freezing night, trying to convince myself I was doing the right thing. That putting the ring on the table was brave, not cowardly. That walking out meant reclaiming my self-worth. But who was I kidding? I was already halfway through a mental breakdown and barely holding it together. I ended up in the parking garage, sitting on the cold hood of our car, staring at my reflection in the windshield. I looked like a man who'd just been left, even though technically I was the one who walked away. Does it still count as abandonment if you're the one who exits, but only because you know you're not wanted? I wanted her to come after me. God, I wanted that so badly. Just a text. A look. Something. Anything that said, please come back. Let's talk. This isn't what it looks like. Even if it was a lie, I would have clung to it. But nothing came. Until, 10 minutes later, when the last thing I expected happened. It wasn't Emma who came down. It was him. Micah. Or Miles. Whatever his name was. Still holding his drink like this was just a casual chat. Hey man, he said, like we were old friends catching up. I didn't say a word. He leaned against the concrete post across from me and crossed his arms. Look, I get it. That sucked. But maybe it's for the best, you know? I turned my head slowly. You seriously follow me to say that? He didn't even flinch. She's been checked out for a while, dude. Everyone sees it. It's not personal. Not personal? My voice cracked like dry wood. I gave her 10 years. And she gave you 5 good ones, he replied casually, sipping. It's not like there's a villain here. I slid off the hood and took 1 step toward him. That's when he smirked. Besides, you're not the first one to leave a ring on her table. He said it like a joke. But my stomach dropped. And I suddenly realized there was a lot I didn't know. I didn't hit him. I wanted to, sure. I imagined my fist cracking through that smug little grin of his, wiping that calm, condescending tone off his face for good. But I didn't. Not because I'm some enlightened soul or pacifist. I just didn't want to give him the satisfaction. He wanted a reaction. He wanted to feel like the main character in a scene he thought I'd already exited. So I just stared at him. You don't get to talk about her like that. I muttered, my jaw tight. He shrugged. Relax. I'm not the enemy here. I'm just saying. Maybe you were holding on to something that wasn't really there anymore. His voice was too steady, too casual, like he wasn't improvising. Like he'd rehearsed this speech. That's when it hit me. He'd done this before. The ring comment. The rehearsed lines. The fake sympathy layered over smugness. This wasn't some awkward run-in. It was routine. You've done this before, I said aloud, not even realizing I was speaking until the words left my mouth. He tilted his head. Done what? This, I snapped. Following guys into parking garages, telling them it's for the best. Dropping cryptic little bombs like you're in a soap opera. He chuckled, which confirmed everything. I should have walked away. Should have gotten in the car and driven off into some cathartic breakup montage, started my healing arc. But my feet were glued to the pavement. My head was spinning. Let me ask you something, I said, suddenly calmer than I felt. How long? He blinked, pretending to be confused. I stepped closer. How long have you two been sleeping together? His smirk wavered. Just for a second. But it was enough. Wow, he said. You really want to know that? After the scene you just made upstairs? Don't you think you've embarrassed yourself enough for one night? He turned to walk away, but my voice followed him. Was it before or after she started calling me boring in front of her friends? He paused, just slightly, then kept walking. That pause told me everything I needed. I stayed there for I don't know how long. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe 30. I kept staring at the empty space where he had stood, hoping the cold wind would erase his words, or that I'd wake up in my bed and realize this whole night had been a nightmare stitched together by insecurity. But when I finally climbed into the car, it wasn't anger that hit me. It was something worse. Doubt. Because here's the thing. Even if they hadn't slept together, even if all of this was just a collection of bad timing and worse assumptions, the moment I placed that ring on the table, something cracked between us that couldn't be glued back together. And deep down, I knew. That crack didn't start tonight. It had been spreading for a long, long time. I didn't go home. The thought of walking into that apartment, our apartment, and seeing her coat still on the hook, her keys in the dish by the door, the half-drunk tea mug she always left on the nightstand, it made my skin crawl. It wasn't just that I was hurt. It was the sheer dread of pretending everything was normal. I couldn't stomach the performance. So I drove. Nowhere specific. Just around the city. Through side streets and past buildings we used to laugh under, kiss beside, live in. It's funny how your own city can feel like enemy territory once your heart's been broken inside it. I parked in front of a 24-hour laundromat. Not because I needed to do laundry. I just needed the hum of machines, the fluorescent lights, the sound of something other than my own thoughts. I sat in the car and replayed every conversation we'd had over the last 6 months, running it through some kind of retroactive lie detector in my head. Things that didn't bother me before started to itch. The sudden gym schedule. The private text with her phone screen always tilted away from me. The business trips that never had receipts. The missing wine glasses when I came home late from work. Little things I had chalked up to forgetfulness or stress. But it wasn't just about her anymore. It was about me. How had I let this happen? How had I become a man who needed to ask a stranger in a suit how long his wife had been cheating? When did I become so afraid of confrontation that I let the truth rot quietly under the floorboards of our marriage? Somewhere between self-blame and exhaustion, my phone buzzed. Emma. I stared at her name for a long time. 5 letters. One person. 100 versions of her all crashing into each other in my head. I didn't answer. Then a second text came through. Where did you go? I laughed. Not because it was funny. It was hollow, tired, almost cruel. Come back up. Please. We need to talk. No mention of the ring. No apology. Just a gentle nudge, like I was a child who'd wandered too far in a supermarket. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. I could have said so many things. I could have let the rage boil out of me in paragraphs. I could have gone nuclear. Instead, I typed something quiet. Simple. Ask Micah. He seems to know more than I do. Delivered. Read. No response. I locked the screen, leaned back, and let the silence settle in. And then I remembered something. Not a memory. A detail. A moment I'd ignored completely earlier in the night. Right before I walked away from that table, her phone lit up. Just for a second. A notification. I saw a name flash across the screen. But it wasn't his. It was a woman's name. And the message preview? Just 3 words. He doesn't know. I sat upright, heart punching through my ribs. It wasn't just Micah. It was something else. Something deeper. And if I was right, Emma hadn't just broken my heart. She was hiding something much bigger. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in the driver's seat until the sky shifted from black to the dull gray of morning. The city yawned and stretched around me, commuters waking up to their routines, completely unaware that my entire world had cracked open 12 hours earlier. I couldn't stop thinking about that message. He doesn't know. I replayed it over and over in my mind like a puzzle I couldn't quite solve. It wasn't Micah. That much I was sure of. The name on the notification wasn't male. It was Claire or Claire, spelled with an I. I wasn't even certain if I recognized it. Was she a friend? A coworker? Someone from book club? Emma rotated friend groups like outfits. Always polished, always seasonal, never long-lasting. But the tone of that message, it wasn't just secretive. It was urgent, like something had gone wrong. And I realized something then. Something sickening. I didn't know my own wife anymore. Not really. I knew her sleep sounds, her coffee order, the way she folded towels in thirds instead of halves. All the shallow things you learn by proximity. But the real stuff? Who she was when I wasn't looking. That was a stranger. I drove home. Slowly. With the kind of dread you feel before opening a letter you know is bad news. When I stepped into the apartment, the silence felt heavier than usual. No sound of the kettle. No clinking mugs. Just the echo of betrayal hanging in the air like invisible fog. I half expected her to be gone. But she wasn't. She was sitting on the couch, in that ugly gray hoodie I once spilled soup on during a flu weekend. The one she'd promised to throw out a dozen times and never did. Her makeup was gone. Eyes red. Hair down. She looked human. Smaller somehow. She didn't speak right away. Just watched me take off my shoes, hang my jacket, pretend this was a normal morning. Then she said, "I didn't sleep." I almost laughed. Neither did I. We're so compatible. Please don't. Don't what? I snapped, spinning toward her. Don't turn this into sarcasm. Don't act like I saw what I saw. Don't ask you why Micah knows more about our marriage than I do. She blinked hard. Micah doesn't. He's just running his mouth. Then why did he know about the ring? Why did he smirk when I asked how long it's been happening? She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. So I pressed harder. And who the hell is Claire? Now that got her attention. She looked up sharply. A flicker of panic danced across her face, and she tried to hide it behind a quick inhale. Don't, I said, voice low. Don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about. Your phone lit up before I walked away. Message preview. 3 words. He doesn't know. She stood slowly, like the floor might collapse if she moved too fast. It's not what you think. Oh, thank God, I said, hands in the air. It's not what I think. What a relief. So explain it. Explain all of it. She was trembling now, but not like someone afraid of getting caught. She looked afraid of something else. I was going to tell you, she whispered. Tell me what? She didn't answer. Instead, she walked over to the bookshelf, the one I built with crooked shelves on our first anniversary, and pulled out a small notebook. One I'd never seen before. She handed it to me, her fingers icy. Inside were pages of names, dates, locations, codes. Some of them crossed out, some highlighted. All of it in her handwriting. What is this? She swallowed. It's why Claire texted me. Because now you do know. I didn't open the notebook all the way. Not at first. I just stared at the pages like they might catch fire if I blinked too hard. There was something wrong about it. Not just the fact that it existed, but the way it had been hidden. Tucked behind travel books we hadn't used in years. Wedged in between Iceland, a photographic journey, and a guide on mastering meditation, the irony of which did not escape me. Emma stood frozen, her arms crossed, but not defensively. She looked hollow, like someone had scraped out her insides and left only a shell that could nod and blink and say, I was going to tell you, like it still meant anything. The names weren't familiar. Not at first. But as I flipped through the pages, something gnawed at me. Some of the entries had notes, descriptions, and a few had initials I did recognize. One belonged to a guy she'd briefly dated years before we met. Another, shockingly, was our old landlord. What the hell is this? My voice cracked. Emma didn't move. It's not what it looks like. I looked at her, jaw tight. Then explain to me why you have a handwritten list of men, dates, hotels, and payment amounts. Her face twisted. It's research. Research. I almost choked. For what? A book? A documentary? She finally exhaled. A group. That stopped me cold. What group? Her eyes darted away. Claire and I started it. Years ago. Before you. Before everything. What kind of group? She hesitated. It's not illegal. It's just. That's not an answer, Emma. Her shoulders slumped as if gravity had doubled. We find them, she said quietly. The ones who hurt people. Women. Girls. The ones who never get reported. Never get caught. Some of them are abusers. Others are worse. We get close, we gather what we need, and we ruin them. Careers. Reputations. Sometimes marriages. I stepped back, heartbeat banging in my ears. So you're, what? Some kind of vigilante seductress hit squad. That's not fair. No? I said, laughing bitterly. Because I'm reading a notebook full of calculated relationships and targets and secret meetups, and I just found out my wife might be screwing men for revenge. Not screwing, she snapped. Not all the time. Not unless it's necessary. Most of the time, they just need to believe I would. I stared at her, trying to see the person I married somewhere behind that terrifying calm. And Micah? I asked. He's one of them? She nodded, slow. He's a predator. HR has a dozen reports buried. Claire's sister was one of them. And me? My voice was suddenly too quiet. Was I just cover? A role? Something to make you look innocent while you played, whatever this is. That broke her. The tears came fast, unexpected, choking. No, she whispered. God, no. You were the only thing that was real. I swear. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that this monstrous secret, existed beside our marriage, not inside it. But that message, he doesn't know. She was hiding this from me. Actively. For years. And suddenly, another thought crashed through my head, colder than any betrayal before it. If she and Claire were keeping tabs on monsters, how many of them knew who I was? And what would they do when they found out I wasn't in the dark anymore? I sat on the edge of our bed for what felt like an hour, the notebook resting on my lap like a live grenade. Every time I flipped a page, the reality warped a little more. These weren't names scribbled in anger. This wasn't some cathartic diary entry or a trauma log. This was calculated, documented, coordinated, planned. My wife had an entire second life. And somehow, I had lived next to it, slept beside it, without knowing. Emma stayed in the hallway. I don't know if she was giving me space or if she was scared to walk in. Maybe both. I didn't call her. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. That's never been me. I'm not the guy who slams doors or breaks plates. I'm the guy who internalizes, who spirals, who dissects every detail until he's sick with hypotheticals. But this wasn't a hypothetical anymore. I opened to one of the earlier pages again. One name circled twice. The only one with a symbol next to it, a star. RH. Next to it, in sharp ink. Confirmed pattern. Repeat offender. Untouchable legally. Media protected. If any name goes public, it starts with this one. I'd seen that name before. Not personally. He was someone I'd only ever heard about. A well-known businessman, the kind who funds hospitals and sits on nonprofit boards. The kind whose name is on buildings. And suddenly, something inside me snapped. Not in rage. In horror. Because I realized what Emma and Claire had done wasn't just covert. It was dangerous. They weren't just poking at sleazy coworkers and serial cheaters. They were circling sharks. And if even one of them figured it out, I stood up, grabbed the notebook, and walked back into the living room. Emma flinched when she saw me holding it like a weapon. They know about me? I asked. My voice wasn't loud, but it felt heavy. Emma swallowed. No, we never used your name. You're not listed anywhere. We kept your identity clean. And if they find out you're married? That I know now? She hesitated. That told me everything. I never wanted to drag you into this, she said, stepping closer. You were the only part of my life that made sense. I kept it away from you because I loved you. I shook my head. You don't get to say that. You don't get to weaponize love as a reason to keep secrets that could get me killed. She stepped back like I'd slapped her. Then she did something unexpected. She reached into her back pocket, and pulled out a phone I'd never seen before, smaller than her usual one, scuffed around the edges, no case. She handed it to me. Claire's number. Contacts. Messages. Codes. I'm giving you everything. I stared at the screen. It was unlocked. Open. Vulnerable. You're burning it down, I said. She nodded. They've been compromised. Someone knows. Claire's safe for now. But she told me if I didn't tell you, if I kept you in the dark, it'd all fall apart. And now, Emma's voice was barely a whisper. Now it already has. I didn't know what to feel anymore. Betrayal didn't even scratch the surface. This wasn't just a broken marriage. This was a ticking bomb. And in that moment, I wasn't sure if I wanted to walk away from her or protect her from what was coming. Because something was coming. And it was already too late to stop it. We didn't sleep for the second night in a row. Emma sat on the floor with her knees pulled to her chest, and I paced like I was trying to wear holes in the carpet. The burner phone sat on the coffee table between us, still open, still glowing. A portal into a world I never knew existed. Dozens of contacts, encrypted threads, coded phrases. If you didn't know what you were looking at, it would just seem like boring logistics. But I knew better now. At one point, she asked if I wanted her to leave. I didn't answer. Not because I wanted her to stay, not because I didn't. I just didn't know how to respond to something like that when my brain felt like scrambled glass. Around 3 a.m., a message came through the burner. One word. From Claire. Safe. No further context. Just that. But Emma let out a breath like she'd been holding it for hours. And for the first time since this all began, she looked human again. Scared. But human. I finally sat down across from her. You said I was the only real thing in your life, I said, my voice low. She nodded, cautiously. I need you to prove that. She looked up at me. How? End it, I said. All of it. Walk away from the network. The missions. The secrets. Tell Claire you're done. We go to the police with what you have. The real ones. The ones who still care. No more games. No more lies. We either rebuild this honestly, or we bury it for good. Emma stared at me like I'd just asked her to step off a cliff. And maybe I had. But after a long silence, she whispered, okay. It wasn't dramatic. There was no movie music playing. But that okay held weight. It was the sound of a person surrendering something she'd built to protect others, even if it had cost her everything else. She picked up the phone and started deleting files. One by one. Message histories. Names. Backups. I didn't stop her. I just watched. When she got to the last folder, she paused. Then she handed it to me. You delete it. So I did. And just like that, the version of her I didn't know, the woman with secrets and strategies and shadows, disappeared. We didn't fix everything overnight. That's not how real healing works. But we started. Slowly. She began therapy. Real therapy. No aliases, no missions. Just Emma. I started talking more. About the years I'd spent feeling invisible. About the ache of loving someone who felt like a reflection more than a partner. About the night I put her ring on the table and walked away from the only thing I thought I'd ever have. And one morning, weeks later, she made coffee and sat beside me on the couch. No makeup. No silence. Just us. She reached into the drawer and pulled out the ring I'd left behind. I never put it back on, she said. I nodded. I was waiting, she continued, for you to tell me if I should. I didn't speak. I just reached out, took it gently from her palm, and slipped it back onto her finger. This time, with eyes open. This time, for real.